I just kind of want to get started with you. Just kind of tell me about like how you one ended up teaching math or ended up in the math field, and then B, a little bit how you um, probably as a homeschool mom, how you transitioned into teaching with play, and what was the thing kind of that made that switch for you, or why you decided that was a way to go versus, say, a traditional curriculum, which is what everybody in the homeschool community pretty much does.
Everybody starts traditional because we start with what we grew up with. We start with what we're used to, which is what I did too when we started homeschooling. You'll get all of the textbooks, get this big stack of books, and start my little first grader on all the workbooks. And they were marshmallows. There was no meat in them, especially in the math. It's like trace the number and learn to spell 8. It's like this has no meaning to it. So we pretty quickly put that aside and just started playing, and I figured I could do more with library books than with what the curriculum was doing. And that might have just been a quirk of that particular curriculum, I don't know, but this, we started just, reading about numbers, working with numbers, making up puzzles for each other. And then later came back to textbooks when they actually had something to offer, when they had problems to offer. But even at that point, the textbook was for me as the teacher. And I would ask my son the problems orally, and he would explain how he figured them out. But as I got into, meeting with local homeschoolers, I realized how much fear so many people had about math. And people just weren't comfortable with it. They didn't feel like they knew what was going on. They could explain things over and over and over, and the kids just wouldn't get it. And so mom feels like a failure, and the kids feel like a failure. And so I started working with some of the local homeschoolers, trying to help them see the side of the math.
So when you're talking about like fear, so that was one of the things, I don't know if I had a fear of math, but so I was at the BBL, and Ted Schwartz had kind of brought up this idea. We talked about homeschooling then. I brought it up when I was there. And I said the difficulty as a homeschool parent, because, well, there's an issue. If your kids are in school and they hate their teacher, like the next year they get a new teacher. But if your kids hate their mother, like they don't get a new mom the next year, right? When you don't move up, right, and you get a new grade and you get a new mom, that doesn't happen. So for me, in knowing that I had this issue over math, and so, and probably everybody's heard this story, but it was awful in our house, the math. And I did fairly well in math, so that meant, can translate when I say fairly well, meant that I could plug numbers into algorithms and spit out solutions. I didn't understand what was going on. So where I hit the wall was pretty much Algebra 2 in high school. Like I was done, because that's when I went in way over my head, and it required understanding that I didn't have. So when I came to teach, so what I knew was that my son was getting problems wrong, and I knew I was explaining, and he wasn't getting it, so exactly what you just said. And then my answer for that was and there was tears and rebellion, and so my answer for that was to make him do push-ups and sit-ups and run and do more problems, to do exactly more of the same thing he wasn't already understanding. And the whole time that was going on, all I could think of was, he's got to get this down because he has to get into college, right? Not because he has to love math, but because he has to get into college. So that was my thing. And Ted talked about having the same thing, even though he knew how to teach differently. He said that my fear over her, there was no room for her in the room because my fear took up all the space.
Uh-huh.
So there was no room for him. So I mean, as you were talking about moms and you started working with moms, like that's kind of what I want to talk about, or at least a part of it is, how do we move? And that's why I loved your book, by the way. So I came to Cuisenaire, I saw this, and when I opened the book of Let's Play Math, for me it was like, just a deep sigh of relief. And I was like, oh, here it is. And she's going to hold my hand and just walk me through, and it's all going to be just fine. Like, that's how I felt as soon as I started, like, it's all going to be okay. You can calm down now. So if you're talking and they haven't read the book, if people haven't read the book, Let's Play Math, because that's what Denise wrote, the book, Let's Play Math. How, if you were going to give that advice to moms who are just starting to teach math and have that panic and don't have a good math education, one, like, let's reassure them that, one, they can teach math, that their kids can enjoy math, and that it's all going to be okay. Or it can be okay. Not it all will be okay, but it can be okay.
It can be okay. It can be okay even if your kids don't ever actually love math, because we are all different. We all have our different interests. It's okay if your kids don't love math, but they can do it, and they can learn to appreciate it for what it is. And so can you, because so many times we have our own baggage that we bring to the table, and then it piles onto our kids. So we need to release our own baggage about math, and then we can help our kids enjoy it. When I first started working with parents, I thought what I needed to do was teach them how to do the problems. You know, if I can teach you how to do the problem, then you can go and teach your child how to do the problem. And I realized over the years that that's really not the issue. The issue is deeper. It's more of a worldview issue. How do you see, what is math all about? And what we need to do in order to get away from the stress, away from the fear, away from the performance anxiety, we need to understand that math is not about getting right answers. School math is often just a focus on getting right answers. Learn the technique, learn the method, follow my instructions, do what I say, and you'll get faster, and you'll be efficient, and you'll get the right answer. That's the goal. But real life math isn't that way. Real life math is about making sense. It's about seeing connections and patterns. It's being able to look at two prices in the grocery store and figure out which is the better buy. It's thinking about the meaning of the situation. And it's not always fast and efficient. It involves wait time. It involves puzzling things out. But if you go the right answer route, the focus on right answers, then you're going to have the stress, the feeling of being a failure. If you focus on making sense, then the right answers will come along as a side effect. And so my goal in Let's Play Math and in the work I do now is to try to get people to switch from the one side of the one way of thinking, the way that they learned from school, to a focus on helping your child make sense of the situation. If they want one tip that can help them make that switch, it would be never tell your child that's right or that's wrong. Always instead ask, how did you figure that out? How do you know? And then let the child explain it. If you do that, you'll grow by hearing their explanation, and they'll grow by putting their thoughts into words.
I like that has changed. Well, I can't say that I never say that that's right or that's wrong. Okay, so that's not true.
Never is probably too strong, but try your very best to avoid it, and try your best not to let your face show it either.
We've replaced that with, so I know that when we were at the BBL, so Dr. Powell, who teaches the classes when we do these conferences for arithmophobia, is the Cuisenaire conferences, is he uses the be careful. So when kids have come to where they're making a mistake, he'll say, be careful, be careful. And then the other thing that he'll do, and that I have adopted, and which seems to work, is I think I don't agree with you. So I'll tell you why I disagree with you, and then you tell me why you're right. So,
Uh-huh.
and so that has helped a lot. I'll tell you why I disagree. And so when we teach classes that I have, somebody will say, I don't think that's right. I will try to, I'm trying now when we're teaching multiple kids to let mistakes go until somebody picks them up. And then somebody will say, well, no, that can't be right. Well, then we have to go back and find out where the mistake was. And then somebody has to explain. And sometimes the kids will say, I disagree. And then the other child then explains. And then the next one will say, oh, okay, I see where I made my mistake in the disagreement. So that's very helpful instead of just having an argument or just coming out and saying you're wrong. If they are positioned in a place that they actually can make a reasonable argument for what they see or what they've done. So yeah, how do you know? And see, what else was I going to ask? So if you're going to make this transition to so I'm a homeschool mom and I have this stack of workbooks and you're saying, well, I can play. So what does play look like in math? And then how do I transition to playing more with math?
Well, I love the work that you guys are doing with the Cuisenaire rods and the play with that. But if I'm thinking, okay, I'm a basic beginner homeschool mom, I've got my workbooks, the way that we all start, one thing that you can do to begin the transition is to not give your child the textbook or the workbook to go on and work on their own. Give them a whiteboard and some markers, and you keep the textbook or workbook. And you do a problem, and then you ask them a problem. They could either answer orally, or they can show you on the whiteboard what they would do. Something magic about whiteboards and colorful markers when you're homeschooling.
And shirt sleeves.
Even just the color makes it feel more like play. But the important part is the discussion, the talking about, how did you know to do that? Why did you approach it this way? If we're stumped, what can we think about? Let's try thinking it through without the numbers. Let's just say she had some and she gave some to him. What would that look like? And because a lot of people get frustrated with word problems because they try to jump to doing something before they stop and think their way through it. But that sort of shift from math as a performance activity to math as a conversation makes a big step toward a more playful look at it. Because when we talk, we joke and we'll bring things in and we'll make each other laugh, and it's just a whole lot less stressful.
Yeah, so I have, and I wanted to see what you said. So I had somebody who emailed me, and they were going through some of these. We just did this bundle sale, and so they had purchased some stuff, and Lacey had written in there, so these questions that you could ask. And so what we're doing is, and I was afraid this would happen, which is always why I'm afraid to put certain things out there, because I'm afraid of how they're going to get used, and not necessarily wrong, but we are still approaching the play as a right or wrong. Like there's this right or wrong way to do this, and the fear that you're going to mess up your kid. And this isn't just in math. I see this when you sit down with the homeschool moms, and that's what they're all afraid of, that I'm going to wreck my kid because of the way that I'm teaching. So if you're going to it seems to me that you already had this idea that like we would just start playing, but as you've advised other moms, and I'm not sure how to say that other than like, okay, we're going to have to shift our focus to more playing and putting less pressure on your child. And there is that whole vagueness, is there's no right or wrong.
It's a game of ideas. It's like a puzzle. If you can think of math as a puzzle, then you can bring that playfulness into it. I think for a lot of people, it's hard to at first think of, for instance, the game that you guys played with 3 + 4 = 7, and changing a number and then changing another number, and each step it looks more and more complicated until you get this really monster equation that makes the kids laugh. And
right.
that is so alien to most beginning homeschoolers, or even longtime homeschoolers who have worked just with textbooks. The idea that an equation could make you laugh. But it's because they've been tinkering with the ideas, adding their own thoughts to it, thinking it through. I think that's part of the thing, is to understand that the ideas themselves can be playful. A lot of people, when you talk about playing math, they think, oh, we have to have a game. We have to have flashy graphics where you see the monster, and in order to defeat the monster, you do this math problem. And games have their value, but if the game is still focused on speed and getting the right answer, it really hasn't crossed over into the really playful sort of math, the math that is just thinking and seeing, what can I do? What if I try this? Although I do teach a lot of math practice games. I have books of math games